terrible news, everyone. Absolutely terrible news. I only have that much of the book left. There's not much. It sucks. I think it's, what, 2 more chapters? And that's it? Oh, for shame. For shame, for shame. Anyways, good morning. All right. Again, my little stuffy nose persists, so I appreciate your patience on it. I'm sure it's pretty annoying to hear me go every so often. All right, 10. Jacob's ladder. Noah came before the flood. I have come before the fire. That comes from Joseph Smith Jr., Journal of Abraham H. Cannon, Volume 16, page 30, accessed on archive.org on December 11th, 2024. That's cool. The TLDR of this chapter. By restoring the dispensations of Adam, Enoch, and Abraham, Joseph recast the arc of history as a wave. In Joseph's religion, covenants are available to all people in all periods of the world. Also, as apocryphal discoveries support, Joseph restored the symbolism of Adam's sacred garment, which saturates the narrative of Joseph's Genesis. In Avengers Endgame, when Captain America picked up Thor's hammer Mjolnir, it was a legendary spectacle, second perhaps only to the first vision, or perhaps possibly below the Mount of Transfiguration. Captain America's purity and strength combined with Thor's hammer was flippin' awesome. Pardon my language. When you think of Captain America holding that hammer, you should first get chills. Then you should think of the patriarch Jacob. Yeah, we're totally following here. Abraham was the chosen servant. Isaac was the willing sacrifice. But Jacob was the convergence. He's the divine combination. Jacob is pizza and root beer. He's the winning touchdown. He's like catching the winning touchdown pass at the homecoming game on your birthday. Jacob is waking up in a snow day on the first day of that. Jacob is waking up to a snow day on the day of that chemistry final you've totally forgot to study for. Jacob is the combination of 2 streams of divine power, the birthright of the priesthood and the garment of Adam. Ooh, wow. Jacob's drip. Adam's garment started this crazy mess all along the way. During the rock concert, the genocide, Canaan's debauchery, reboot, and Isaac's return from the ashes, the sacred covering of Jehovah is still missing. Ever since Ham stole it away, the righteous line of patriarchs has been without their birthright. But where did it go? Was it just lost to history? If we consult the Bible, we find no explicit mention of the holy garment of Adam. But careful reading will reveal where the clumsy scribes covertly tried covering up Adam's covering. Remember that Enoch inherited the garment of Adam and passed it to Methuselah. See Jasher 7:25. After the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought the bodies of Adam and Eve into the ark. All indications are that this was purposeful and proper. But then the garment is stolen from the patriarchal line by Ham. Fast forward to Abraham's day, and the garment of Adam is owned by Nimrod, Ham's grandson. As Rabbi Yehuda summed it up, the garment in which the Blessed One made for Adam, don't know why I'm doing German, Yiddish-ish, but the garment which the Blessed One made for Adam and his wife was with Noah and his sons in the ark. And when they came out from the ark, Ham, the son of Noah, took it from him and gave it as an inheritance to Nimrod, his grandson. That is Garments of Skin on Sephira.org. The Bible mentions the name Nimrod a mere 3 times, once in Genesis, once in Chronicles, and once in Micah. Genesis and Chronicles mention in passing that Nimrod was mighty upon the earth, 1 Chronicles 1:10. And a great hunter, that's Genesis 10:8. While Micah says there is some kind of land of Nimrod, see Micah 5:6, Genesis briefly states that Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord, Genesis 10:9. Keep in mind that this is one of 3,400 distinct names in the Bible. From this short description, one might think Nimrod was righteous, being mighty, before the Lord. Yet this forgettable throwaway character gets a bit more attention in the Book of Mormon. Despite Nimrod's forgettable cameo in the Bible, the Book of Mormon mentions the Valley of Nimrod, see Ether 2:4. That valley, that valley just happens to be where the Jaredites go to catch fowls of the air and gather flocks and bees for their journey. Also, Nimrod was important enough that one of the Jaredite kings is named after him. However, when the Book of Mormon mentions that a Jaredite king named his heir Nimrod, it just so happens to be a king of a wicked dynasty, entangled in political assassinations, as well as wickedness and idolatry. Not only does Joseph say Nimrod was more than a mere extra in the background of the Bible, but that he was wicked. So, who is right? The Bible or the Book of Mormon? Is Nimrod a nobody? And furthermore, is he a baddie? The Apocrypha agree with Joseph again. The account of Jasher, right at the time the Jaredites would have been fleeing from the Great Tower, the man Nimrod was rising to prominence. And more good news for Joseph, the secret to his rise is that he is the keeper of Adam's sacred garment. The garment isn't just pretty. It apparently gifts the wearer supernatural qualities and unconquerable strength. Jasher says that Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. With that strength, Nimrod became a mighty hunter and strengthened himself. His hunting skills qualify him for warfare, and his success in battle earns him election as king. Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power. And you know that what they say about power, it corrupts. The Book of the Cave of Treasures hints that Nimrod was learning the art of divining. Several accounts say that Nimrod worshipped fire. In the immortal words of the former President Joe Biden, Nimrod, he was a bad dude. Where's my ice cream? Sorry. Nimrod, he was a bad dude. Anyway, let's see here, quote, "And all the earth was of one tongue, and words of union, but Nimrod did not go in the way of the Lord, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him, from the days of the flood until those days. And he made gods of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them, and he rebelled against the Lord, and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways." Jasher 7:46-47. Like many nephews throughout history, Nimrod probably learned these bad habits from his uncle. Canaan is listed as one of Nimrod's great men, with whom he took counsel. Thus, the antediluvian abominations were put in power again, whereas previously it was righteous men on the mountain versus corrupted sons of Seth below. Now the human sacrificing, idol-worshipping team was armed with Adam's sacred mantle. Nimrod and his great men counseled together to construct a city, and in it a strong tower, and its top reaching heaven. And they will make themselves famed, so that they may reign upon the whole earth, or upon the whole world. Jubilees says they planned to ascend thereby to heaven. Funny how they all knew heaven wasn't some alternate dimension, but a physical place. Jasher says their plans of ascension weren't benign. From the city and the tower, the people of Nimrod planned to ascend to heaven, where they would fight against God. What? What? Sorry, wow, I'll start over again, but From the city and tower, the people of Nimrod planned to ascend to heaven, where they would fight against God and smite him with bows and spears, so they could place their own gods there and serve them. What? That's Jasher 9:26. What? So this isn't just an eyesore that God wants out of the way, like when the citizens of Provo protested the construction of the new missionary training center because it would ruin their view. Yes, really. See Green, Minor, and Brittany in October 12th, 2012. LDS Church nixes plan on 9-story MTC building in Provo. What? I'm sorry. That just blows my mind. Like, I'm thoroughly convinced that, sure, they were trying to reach heaven, but they were trying to do so, without the priesthood and idea of God. To me, it was along the ideas of they wanted to steal the temple ceremonies or screw them up and have it be their own gods in their own way. And yes, that kind of holds true, but the idea of literally physically going up to heaven, killing God so you can stick your own gods in there. Well, maybe they were a step ahead or a step behind. God, what is it? Nietzsche. We've killed God. God is dead and whatever else. Holy crap. Wow! Anyway, the Tower of Babel was part of the wicked city of Nimrod, and it was a haven of the antediluvian and Canaanite abominations. A careful reading reveals that this was much more than just a really big building. The people of Nimrod were trying to reach unto heaven to allow the people to make them a name. Yep, Genesis 11:4. People to make them a name. Dr. Thomas of Brigham Young University thinks that the word Babel comes from the Akkadian Babelim, meaning gate of God. She continues, it is apparent, then, that the Tower of Babel was a counterfeit gate of God, or temple, that Ham's priesthood deprived descendants built in rebellion against God. Okay, so my whole idea and theory is that they were making a temple that didn't have what really should be in the temple is more supported. Yay, congratulations me and my thoughts. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, Josh, you're saying they wanted to kill him. Well, at the same time, I mean, that's not wrong. Replacing things in the temple, like especially if you read in the language of Adam, shows how bad that can be. Whoa, just whoa. Like the whole concept of rely on Jesus, rely on his mercy, have faith in him. Like, it makes more visceral sense when you have these tangible stories as the temple. But trying to just mess that up on purpose, just because you wanted to do the antediluvian stuff, you don't get the priesthood, and now you're going to literally take what is good and twist it? Yeesh. Yeesh. Okay. Nimrod stood atop this counterfeit temple wearing very much not counterfeit temple garments. Blocking the view isn't a great reason for blocking the view isn't a great reason for confounding languages. But breaking up a pagan counterfeit temple at least deserves something. Forcing everyone to go buy a dictionary is soft compared to the flood. Despite Genesis's silence on the matter, Nimrod isn't just a great hunter or the high priest over a pagan religion. He's apparently king over the whole neighborhood. He is both dictator and deity. Coincidentally, the time of Nimrod portrayed in the Book of Ether is the story of wars and idolatry. It isn't surprising that the Jaredites' first stop on their exodus is a nearby valley, should be in a place named after the nearest monarch. So far, everything aligns with Joseph's addictions. Curiously, Genesis calls the tower of Babel. but the Book of Mormon does not. Even though the Book of Mormon contains a whole book, Ether, out of refugees from the tower, never does the Book of Mormon call the place Babel. The chapter headings inserted later use the name Babel, but the Jaredite authors themselves do not. This would seem like a weird mistake, except that it's consistent with the Book of Jasher, which says that the tower was called Babel only after the confusion of tongues. Quote, "And those who were left amongst them, when they knew and understood the evil which was coming upon them, they forsook the building, and they also became scattered upon the face of the whole earth. And they ceased building the city and the tower. Therefore he called that place Babel." That's Jasher 9, 36 through 37. How does Joseph manage to avoid every snare? Has there ever been a fraudster so unbelievably lucky? And this isn't even close to the most amazing tightrope Joseph has ever walked, but somehow he spun the tale that just happens to fit the apocryphal narrative perfectly. The new discoveries show that Joseph threaded these needles repeatedly. Esau's wrestle. Back to the garment. Years later, after Nimrod's glory days are spent, Isaac sires twins. Rebekah gives birth to Esau and Jacob. Quote, "And the first came out red all over, like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came out his brother, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob." Genesis 25:25 through 26. This is the second mention of the word garment in the King James Version. The first being Noah's garment during the befuddling burgling by Ham. The etymology of Esau's name is unsettled, but the verse points to wordplay off the words hairy garment. Confined to Genesis, this seems totally random. But outside of the canon, Esau proves crucial in the story of the garment. The book of Jasher describes how Esau won the garment from Nimrod. Oh, really? According to one rabbinic tradition, Esau saw Nimrod's garment and covered it in his heart. Say again? According to one rabbinic tradition, Esau saw Nimrod's garment and, coveted it in his heart. Yeah, I could see that. One day, when Nimrod was out hunting, Esau started suddenly from his lurking place and drew his sword and hastened and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. Wow. Jasher 27:7. Esau also had to dispatch 2 of Nimrod's men, and then he took the valuable garments of Nimrod. Okay. Esau has the garment of Adam. That would probably explain the redness. I mean, slaying 3 people to go back and get the garment? Just saying. Some rabbis tell the story differently. They say Nimrod wasn't assassinated, but challenged Esau to a wrestling contest. Since the garment gave Nimrod superhuman strength, Esau was doomed. He came to seek advice from his brother Jacob on the matter, who told him that he needed to get Nimrod's garments off. Jacob says, "When Nimrod comes to kill you, say to him, 'Take off your garments so it won't get mucky with blood.' The trick works, and Esau prevails." These traditions give greater insight into Esau's forfeiture of birthright. Genesis doesn't give much. And Jacob sawed pottage. Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me, I pray thee, that same red pottage, for I am faint." And Jacob said, "Sell me this day thy birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me this day." And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. That's Genesis 25, verses 30 through 33. Jasher claims Esau was expecting to be caught and killed. Or perhaps this is when Esau was pretending to go wrestle and needed some bulk up between rounds. Esau is despondent, trades the birthright for some strength from pottage. Jacob gives the cunning advice and Esau prevails. Keep in mind that the birthright was a bit muddled between Jacob and Esau. Esau was born first, but little Jakey took hold on Esau's heel, making them born literally at the same time. Ooh. With despondent Esau now swearing away his birthright, Jacob has legitimate claim to the heirship. So, Jacob has the birthright now. But where's the garment? Armed with Adam's garment, the Esau of Judean genocide, sorry, let me reread that. Armed with Adam's garment, the Esau of the Judean genocide became a cunning hunter. The records are fuzzy, but it sounds like at some point Rebekah got the garment from Esau and dug up some earth and hid them. Perhaps this is what saves Esau's life. The records are unclear. With this backstory, the scene of Jacob's blessing contained in Genesis looks a lot different. Perhaps because his son retrieved the garment of Adam, Isaac determined to give his full blessing to Esau. But when Esau goes off to hunt for venison, perhaps because his son retrieved the garment of Adam, Isaac determined to give his full blessing to Esau. But when Esau goes off to hunt for venison, Isaac's wife Rebekah hatches a plan. With Esau gone, she retrieves the goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau. The old Slavonic tale calls it something in Russian that I can't read, or Bugataya Odedia, which allows the translation godly robes. Rebekah then dresses the now birthright son Jacob in the garment of Adam and presents him to Isaac. The key to tricking Isaac is Adam's garment, or Esau's godly raiment. Isaac isn't satisfied that this is his son Esau until he smelled the smell of his raiment. That comes from Genesis 27:27. And it had the fragrance of the field which the Lord hath blessed. That fragrant field was Eden, as the Genesis Rabbah implicitly tells us that the perfume of the Garden of Eden entered the room with Jacob. So, the garment next to the skin, the garment of Adam that gave strength was won by Esau, whether that was assassination or wrestling. And Esau gave that up to Jacob with the whole selling his birthright for pottage, because he felt near death, whether that was he was being chased or otherwise. This is a very fuzzy spot, but it does mean that Jacob would be getting the garment. And on one of these videos that Jonah Barnes did, he was talking about how the garment smelled like Eden, and that's what made them good hunters, is all the animals are like, oh, back to the Garden of Eden. And so they would not smell the hunter, and so he would win. Obviously, they would be killed because they're like, oh, the peaceful Garden of Eden, and suddenly, Nimrod or Esau, when they had the garment on, would be able to hunt them with practically no issues at all. Wow, okay, all right. So, and this same thing is what is making Isaac think that it's Esau, was that he had the garment on. Now, if I remember right, Esau was a very hairy man. Now, the question is does the hairiness come from him, or does the hairiness come from the garment? Which would be very interesting. So, let's keep reading. All right. We're not just talking about Adam's natural musk. The smell of the garment of Adam is the smell of the holy incense wafting through the air in Eden, which would be temple incense. The Armenian penitence of our forefather Adam describes the garden as a source of sweet incense. When God came to Eden and caught Adam and Eve naked, it wasn't just routine home teaching visit. The angel Gabriel was blowing a trumpet and summoning all the angels who were praising him. The air filled with fragrance as all the plants of the garden flowered when God reached the garden. Jubilees recounts that on that day on which Adam sent forth from the garden, he offered a sweet savor, an offering. So these clothes were filled with the eternal odor of paradise. This is unmistakable odor that has Isaac completely convinced. Jacob receives not only the birthright blessing of Isaac, but the sacred vestment of God's image. After centuries in the inheritance of Adam is brought back to God's chosen branch. Captain America picked up Thor's hammer. But, as the apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ will tell you, with chosenness comes ankle biters. Jacob's ladder. Jacob is the pivot point of the Bible. He represents the moment when God goes from dealing with individuals to dealing with a nation. Jacob becomes Israel, and Israel becomes a kingdom. To put it dryly, the Hebrew Bible is the story of the Y chromosome. Cool. That comes from Etienne, 2007, page 65. So someone specifically said that. Such chosenness attracts accusation of racism. Building a nation causes major theological problems. Peter tells us that God is no respecter of persons. Yet that is exactly what he sounds like in the traditional canon, favoring one race over another. Atheists see racism in the belief that there is a special creation within humanity with one tribal name. That is allied to racism and tribalism and bigotry. See Hitchens, page 56. Creedists have a hard time escaping the perception that a Jewish chosenness is exceptionality. Let me reread that because I screwed it up. Creedists have a hard time escaping the perception that a Jewish chosenness and exceptionality is basically cultural chauvinism. Those quotes come from, again, Etienne, 2007, Jews and Race. In other words, the Old Testament sure does sound like it favors one race over another. Despite Christ trying to dispel that nonsense in the meridian of time, racists from the southern politicians in antebellum America to the Hebrew Israelites on the corner of 76th and Main Street appeal to the Bible for justification. The Bible can end up creating racists in one corner and atheists in the other. Ironically, this is the precise opposite of Jacob's true story. Instead of fathering some special creation within humanity with one tribal name, Jacob's true story confirms the central tenet of Joseph Smith Jr.'s ministry, dispensationalism. The Bible mentions dispensations 4 times. 1 Corinthians 9:17, Ephesians 1:10, and also 3:2, and Colossians 1:25. All of the mentions coming from Paul, who's a good one to have that happen to. The most famous is Paul's prophecy about the dispensation of the fullness of times, which for him was sometime in the future. That's Ephesians 1:10. The problem for the Creedists is that these statements make the gospel sound cynical, repetitive, imperfective, and, by implication, unfinished. Dispensationalism leaves the door open for a future prophet. As a result, Creedists have become creative in dealing with dispensations. I did not know about this. One theologian writes that God has divided human history into ages. Yeah, well, Augustine said, distinguish the ages and the scriptures harmonize. One Christian theologian notes that not all Christians are agreed on the number of dispensations or the names that should be given to them. In fact, not all Christians accept dispensations at all. Some offer that there are at least 2 dispensations, while others put the number at 7. Still others think a dispensation is not a period or epoch, a common but erroneous use of the word. but a mode of dealing, an arrangement or administration of affairs. In his book Dispensationalism, Charles Ryrie, R-Y-R-I-E, Ryrie, explains the periods of the Bible thusly. 1. Innocency, that's Genesis 1:3 through Genesis 1:3 through chapter 3, verse 6. 2. Conscience, Genesis 3:7 through 8. Or sorry, God, how they have that is weird. Genesis chapter 3, verse 7 through chapter 8, verse 14. 3. Civil government, Genesis 8, verse 15 through chapter 11 through 9. 4. Patriarchal rule, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 through Exodus 18:27. 5. Mosaic law, Exodus 19:1 through John 14 through verse 30. Grace, Acts 2, verse 1 through Revelation 19:21. And 7. Millennium, Revelation 20, verse 1 through 15. This sounds like a 7th grader writing a book report with ChatGPT. This makes the millions of people who lived during these dispensations into pawns to serve the Creedist notion of biblical sufficiency. This is how we get Calvinists and the idea that man has no free will. These contrived creedal contortions condemn everyone who lived before the Reformation of Martin Luther. It's a type of eschatological narcissism. Everyone only existed as a precursor to me. Joseph could never compete on the stage of exegetical gymnastics. His was always a plainer reading. For him, dispensationalism was the idea that God is constantly trying to redeploy prophets to guide his children on earth, as much as they will accept. Each time his children rebel, repent, rise, and rebel again is called a dispensation. Instead of one long arc, the history of mankind is an oscillating wave. Joseph revealed that his particular epic was Paul's foretold dispensation of the fullness of times. Brigham Young called our present day the dispensation of all dispensations. No pommel horse needed. Enoch 0 records an early revelation on dispensationalism. Having been taken up into heaven, Enoch beheld generation upon generation. Each epoch was accompanied by angels descending out of heaven, bearing testimony of the Father and the Son. See Moses 7:27. Joseph Smith Jr. taught that there were Eliases raised up who tried to restore these very glories. Also, that God sends down his men for this reason. While angels are descending to preach the truth, prophets are ascending after serving their ministries. Joseph revealed that many people have ascended, including the people of Zion, Enoch, the people of Melchizedek, Moses, Elijah, Alma, John the Alma the elder or Alma the younger? Anyway, John the beloved, the 3 Nephites, and perhaps even more people from Enoch to Noah. I'm also willing to bet Marjorie Pay Hinckley. So there's been a whole lot ascending and descending across many times and places. And these are just the ones we know about, thanks to the revelations of Joseph Smith Jr. Footnote on this: Noah was also translated to be a guide to John the Baptist, which will be discussed in a later book. Noah is the angel Gabriel, according to Joseph Smith Jr. Even more heretical to the creeds, Joseph's dispensations are not limited to one region either. While biblical Christianity leaves India, China, Africa, Scandinavia, Ireland, Australia, the Americas, and everywhere else out to rot, Joseph Smith Jr.'s religion is as broad as the heavens. Prophets in New York? Absolutely. Prophets in Central Asia? Why not? This is egalitarian prophetship. Joseph is the perfect opposite of egomaniacal, proud, and narcissistic. The critics make him seen, as the critics make him seen. Also, this perspective is the polar opposite of the accusations of racism and favoritism leveled at God. Joseph may be creative and he may be humble, But was he right? The Critics discover none of this. Let us consult the newly found witnesses. As a baseline, Genesis tells the story. The founding patriarch of God's chosen nation is Jacob, with the birthright and the garment of Adam. Jacob will sire the Israelite nation. But before that happens, Jacob is given a vision known as Jacob's ladder. Genesis describes Jacob's ladder in a few sentences. Quote, "And Jacob dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it." That's Genesis 28, verses 12 and 13. This is when Jacob receives the promise of Abrahamic fertility. After that, Jacob reacts in awe, and the story moves on. Just generally speaking, I've always thought of that as, temple work and other things like that, and that's where the temple would be built. And so let's see what more there is to be had. This is when Jacob received. According to the Slavonic account, there is much more to this story. The vision is essentially the same, but in Slavonic, Jacob responds to the vision by praying, "Tell me the interpretation of my dream." I was looking at the footnote. There was apparently earlier something that said, was Joseph Smith egomaniacal, proud, and narcissistic? Et nu, but we've already gone past that. Anyways, tell me the interpretation of my dream. And God obliges, just like Clippy was always there for those early Microsoft Office users. An angel pops up to give Jacob a guided tour of his vision. The angel explains that the ladder is this age, and the 12 steps are the periods of this age. Oh, really? The angel tells of kings that will be raised up from the grandsons of his brother Esau, and that his descendants shall be exiles in a strange land. The angel foretells the iniquity and the sins of Jacob's grandsons. Their wickedness will cause a temple in the name of his God to be deserted. After that, this angelic tour guide describes a prophet from the Most High and a baby in the womb. Cough, cough, who will speak of his way. This prophet will be followed by the coming of the expected one, whose path will not be noticed by anyone. Holy crap! Then the Almighty will be on the earth in body and will become known everywhere in all lands, which is... I'm sorry. So he got the whole tree of life vision too, basically, except for him it was a ladder, but so what? This sounds like Joseph has been monkeying with millennia-old texts again. Jacob was seeing 12 periods, his grandchildren in Egypt, ups and downs, the desecration of the temple, the Babylonian exile, John the Baptist, as well as Jesus, and the spread of Christianity among the Gentiles. Yep. The Almighty will be on the earth in body and will become known everywhere in all lands. Yep. This is Jacob. This is the beginning of the entire Israelite nation. This, before a single Israelite has been born. Yet already the Lord is promising that the covenant will leave if people don't behave. Far from a guarantee of divine favor, dispensationalism teaches that God will try anyone who's willing, and no nation is unjustly preferred over any other. While Jewish scribes were heavily invested in protecting their status as the sole chosen race, this extra-biblical writer had no such ulterior motive. Some ancients believed that God was not exclusive to just one tiny subset of humanity. The Quran contains the statement of the angels as short as it is deep. We sent a messenger to every nation. Quran, the B, 1636. 2 centuries after Christ, the mysterious prophet Mani describes his role to the Babylonians. Quote, "Wisdom and deeds have always, from time to time, been brought to mankind by messengers of God. So, in one age, they have been brought by the messenger called Buddha to India, in other by Zarathustra to Persia, in another by Jesus to the west. Thereupon, this revelation has come down, this prophecy, in this last age, through me, Mani, the messenger of the God of truth, to Babylonia. For the Bible's ancient compilers, Jacob's ladder hits all the wrong ones. The undulation of the ages, the wickedness of Israel, the loss of the covenant, the destruction of the temple at Jerusalem, the corporeal Messiah who will not be recognized, and the releasing of the covenant to the Gentiles. Ouch! Everything is wrong with this vision. So the scribes reduce it to, whoa, a ladder. This place is terrible. Next chapter. Not unlike the Slavonic Jacob, Joseph's theology in Enoch 0 is so broad and open that it bursts the borders of any religion. Modern or ancient, Joseph taught salvation was open, not just for the sons and daughters of Israel, but every son and daughter of Adam will hear the gospel of Jesus Christ in its purity and in its fullness, and will have adequate option to choose it. Truman G. Madsen, paraphrasing Joseph's sermon to Daniel H. Wells, Madsen's lecture to a BYU on August 22nd, 1978. It's entitled Joseph's Personality and Character. So, this is getting good. Hi, how can I help you, Keely? So funny. Well, okay, gotta have a pause for my children. Tibetan fox looks like some from memory.
Like, I just came across it.
She wanted to share that the Tibetan fox looks like someone was trying to draw it from memory.
Bro, I wheezed. It was horrible.
You wheezed? You were laughing so hard? That's so funny. Love you, dearie.
Love you, Grandpa.
All right. So, this is interesting because, yeah, there is a universalist kind of thread in the Church of Jesus Christ. It kind of depends on your view because, yeah, if you're reading the Bible just on its own and you're getting the whole chosen people, chosen ones things, you kind of feel that way up until the point that it becomes like, now it's going to all the Gentiles in the Book of Mormon. And in some ways, there's still a thread of elitism in, we're the chosen people of God because we have the full Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But it's not strong. It's not like, well, we're the best and you suck. I mean, if someone really took it to that extreme, they're on the wrong side of the fence. It would be more along the lines of, if we're the chosen people because we've accepted the full Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because that's what it is now, is of Latter-day Saints, then we have a responsibility to try and help everyone to come to it, not, well, we're good and you're not, and so I'm going to sit back here and just wait for the second coming. This is not going to happen. If you are like that, then you're doing things wrong. If you sit there and think, well, we're the best because we're in the right church, but you understand the theology, then you're like, well, that means I really need to get my butt in gear and help everyone else to get here too. But there's something that's even better than that, which I think generally is pervading more now than ever, which is, look, whatever truth you have, bring it with you. That was really kickstarted hardcore with Gordon B. Hinckley, if I remember right. Because, before that it was flood the world with the Book of Mormon and focus on all these different things, which is perfectly fine for the setup. But the delivery is, we got to get everyone to just believe instead of go to atheism, nihilism, and be brought down the path of Satan. Because, frankly, reading back in the history of time and things like that, I'm starting to realize that, just having the concept of Jesus Christ, just having the concept of what he taught around the world, even if it's not the fullness of the gospel, even if it's not the whole enchilada of, hey, let's try and get back to God, and Jesus Christ is going to be covering our sins, and he wants us to come to him by living what he asked us to do. Even if you miss all that, if all you have is his basic teachings in the Sermon on the Mount, which, again, I believe is extremely important, and as in the language of Adam, posits the idea that that may have been ordinance-like, because where else do we repeat prayers basically the same? It's when ordinances are being done. Then you get the idea that, well, maybe it's kind of tied to the temple in some way, and more importantly, it's just the most important teachings. Then you really get a sense of, if you at least have that, the life of individuals, then families, then communities, then cities and nations are all improved. Yeah, that helps, because it would help. Like there's YouTube videos of guys going to kind of Eastern nations, whether that's the ones I was thinking about is the How Ridiculous guys. They're the guys who go to this tower in Australia and throw things off the tower to make it go boom, and all sorts of other ridiculous, funny things. Well, they traveled to the border between India and Nepal to highlight a group that is trying to stop human trafficking from going on. And if you truly have individuals, families, communities, and cities believing in the concepts of Jesus Christ, then that kind of stuff starts to dry up and disappear. Where if it's absent, and it's, I better get mine before I die, because life is short and brutal and nobody cares, that is fertile ground for all sorts of horrific things. So yeah, am I sitting here thinking of Buddhism and Shintoism as the end all because some prophet-like person arrived there? No, but at the same time, I would rather have someone adhering to some form of religion that allows them to treat their neighbor kindly and be able to love God, love something outside of themselves, strive to be a better human being overall, than to be self-centered, selfish, and nihilistic. And because that's just such a broad path, an easy way down to the plains of sin. Okay, aside is done. Let's get back to it. Here we go. The God of Jacob and the God of Joseph are far, far bigger than any one book or people. Oh, let me actually just reread the paragraph. I know I'm going to be redoing a bit, but just want to make sure I got it all. It is the idea that, not unlike the Sylvanic Jacob, Joseph's theology in Enoch 0 is the broad and open, that it bursts the borders of any religion, modern or ancient. Joseph taught salvation was open, not just for the sons and daughters of Israel, but every son and daughter of Adam will hear the gospel of Jesus Christ in its purity and its fullness, and will have adequate option to choose from it. How is it possible with Joseph's religion only available to a tiny sliver of mankind? Because the gospel can be accepted in this life or the next, as recalled by Jesse N. Smith in the Journal of Jesse Nathaniel Smith. The God of Jacob and the God of Joseph are far, far bigger than any one book or people. What atheists and Jews get wrong about God's covenant is that it was never about temporal nepotism. God was not choosing a nation that would be more prosperous than others. The covenant was specifically about the mortal advent of Jehovah in the case of Judah, and the stewardship of the priesthood in the case of Levi. Judah wasn't promised to be rich or powerful. The tribe of Judah was chosen to host the Son of God when he came in the flesh. Levi was charged with the priesthood, which is an honor, but a heavy one. When Joseph received the keys of the kingdom of the dispensation of the fullness of times, see D&C 128:20, he was linking each prophetic era with priesthood stewardship Abraham's chosen seed was not that they'd be wealthy or powerful, but in their hands they shall bear this ministry and priesthood unto all nations. See Abraham 2:9. Sounds all roses, right? Wrong. Years before the Slavonic document was available, Joseph taught that the priesthood could prove a cursing instead of a blessing. See History of the Church 4, page 207 to 209, punctuation modernized from a discourse prepared by Joseph Smith to read at the church conference held on October 5th, 1840. So that's where the prove a cursing instead of a blessing quote comes from, which means that came from Joseph. Sorry, I wanted to dig into that one because that's an important thing to acknowledge. Like, I keep telling my kids, look, by teaching you the gospel, I'm giving you both a blessing and a cursing. The blessing is that if you follow all these precepts, your life will be blessed in all sorts of different good and cool ways. But the cursing is, you know better. If you don't live up to what you know better, you take more responsibility. And that's a big deal. The apocryphal testament of the 12 patriarchs teaches this very thing. Despite Levi's children receiving the blessing of the priesthood, it was only until I come and sojourn in the midst of Israel. Before Levi was dead, he was prophesying, my children, I have learnt that at the end of the ages ye will transgress against the Lord. Levi predicts his children shall be puffed up because of their priesthood. Oof. Quote, if ye be darkened through transgression, what, therefore, will all the Gentiles do, living in blindness? Yea, ye shall bring a curse upon our race, because of the light of the law which was given for to lighten every man. This ye desire to destroy by teaching commandments contrary to the ordinances of God. That is the testament of Levi. 14:4. Does this sound like favoritism? The traditional Old Testament might depict Judah or Levi as the teacher's pet, but Joseph and the Apocrypha show that what the covenant really entails. Levi is responsible to help the Gentiles living in blindness, not judge them. Far from conquering the Gentiles or destroying them, the Lord wants Israel to be a light to them. Israel isn't just a servant to the Lord, but a servant to the nations. Prominent atheist and humanoid Eeyore, Christopher Hitchens, took as much time to read the Book of Mormon as he took to do his hair, and thence concluded that it contained crude racism. Hitchens heroically informed the ignorant public that Joseph Smith took even further from the nasty fable of divinely sanctioned racism. That's what 1 minute on Google gets you, kids. Oh, okay, yeah. Forget the fact that the entire premise of the Book of Mormon is that Judah isn't uniquely favored to have prophets. The Book of Mormon tells the story of the Jaredites becoming the greatest nation on the face of the earth. See Ether 142. The Jaredites were black by David Grant Stewart, 1978, National Translator Certification Service. Interesting. Sorry. Even more faithful than Seth, Enoch, and Noah is the black Jaredite Mahonrite Mori Ankamer. Oh, I read the footnote for that earlier than I should have. So, the Book of Mormon tells the story of the Jaredites becoming the greatest nation upon all the face of the earth. Even more faithful than Seth, Enoch, and Noah is the black Jaredite Mahonrite Mori Ankamer. That was cool. Joseph Smith Jr. himself ordained blacks to the priesthood and ran the first abolitionist candidate for president in the history of the United States. To be a renowned historian, you need to write and research and publish and write. To be a famous atheist, you need a pulse. If Hitchens had a little more patience and short-term memory, say... Sorry. If Hitchens had a little more patience and short-term memory than, say, that of Goldfish, he might have noticed that the racism in the Book of Mormon is a failure. Light-skinned Nephites didn't fare better against dark-skinned Lamanites. Samuel, the dark-skinned Lamanite, cried repentance to the light-skinned Nephites, and Christ did away with all divisions among them in the 1st century A.D. In the finale, the fair ones who rejected Jesus were all hewn down. Nephites ended up the villains. As Dr. Hugh Nibley said, the tragedy of the Nephites, who brought destruction by war upon their own heads, was not what became of them, but what they themselves became. In the end, the Lamanites won out because they hadn't shirked their duty like the Nephites had, as Joseph revealed. He who sins against the greater light shall receive the greater condemnation. Once you restore the covenant of the Messiah, the priesthood, and the expectations that come with them, then the Bible sheds its facade of racism and instead displays God's unbounded love for all mankind. Adam's drip. This whole crazy story started with Adam and Eve falling from paradise and getting holy garments. Over the course of 2,400 years, those garments went from Jehovah to Adam, to Noah, to Ham, to Nimrod, to Esau, to Jacob. Whew. Sorry. Jacob, now named Israel, gave the sacred garments to Joseph. The Old Testament bumbles this as the coat of many colors, or if you read the Hebrew translation, they say the coat of many cuts. But this makes zero sense. Joseph's brothers almost murdered him? They sold him into slavery out of jealousy for a fly letterman? Is this The Devil Wears Prada? Was fashion so hype in 1000 BC Palestine that grown men were committing fratricide over fabulosity? This coveting of a colorful coat only makes sense if you treat the Bible like a cartoon. Where the scribes write a coat of many colors should instead read many markings. As Dr. Hugh Nibley said, there is no mention in any ancient source of a garment of many colors. That is an invention of modern editors trying to explain it. The original Hebrew, ketonet pasim, refers to an extremity of sort, like a long-sleeved tunic that has nothing to do with color. The Latin Vulgate description of a tunicam polymitam means tunic wrought with many threads. The Greek Septuagint describes Joseph's coat as chiton, which is a robe or tunic that fastens at the shoulder. The chiton is also poikilon, meaning embroidered or elaborate. So if you can spot what these true translations have in common: Hebrew, ketonet pasim, tunic to extremity; Latin, tunicum polymitam, tunic wrought with many threads; Greek, chitona pioklon, an embroidered or elaborate robe. The right answer was not color. None of these have anything to do with color. The ancient sources also opine on the smell of Joseph's fit. Just as Isaac recognized his heir by the smell of his clothing, Jacob also could detect the unmistakable smell of Adam's garb. When Jacob approached Egypt, he said to those of his sons and their children present, "I truly sense the scent of Joseph." Whoa, that comes from the Quran, 1294. This is just like how Isaac recognized his heir by the smell of Eden. In reality, the coat of many colors is the sacred garment. The garment not only symbolized purity and all that good stuff, it meant Joseph was the heir of God's image and the ruler over his brothers. It meant Jehovah himself would cover our shame. It was the most coveted cloth in creation. Like Genesis as a whole, the story of Joseph is just an extension of the multi-generational feud over Adam's garment. Somewhere, some atheist critic is snorting about Adam's garment. He's dusting the Dorito flakes out of his patchy peach fuzz beard and quipping, "This whole thing is just a fight over magic underwear. Hergle-dergle." This could not be further from the truth. While the texts all agree that the garment of Eden has supernatural properties like healing Jacob's blindness, what? See also the Quran 1296. Wow. So what? In the end, death comes for us all. The garment didn't save Adam or Nimrod. In the end, we're all swallowed up by the great certainty, the detestable maw of inescapable death. The theists all die, and the atheists all die. And then we're lost forever. The physical garment of Adam is nothing compared to what it represents. Jehovah's shield. The garment is a symbol that salvation from death and re-entry into God's presence is impossible without the covering sacrifice of Jehovah. Death conquers all, garment wearers and orange powdery atheists alike. Orange powdery atheists, it's the Cheetos. Only Jehovah's blood can blot out our sins and rescue us from annihilation. Like the God of Isaac, the tailor who made the garment of Adam has power over death itself. Shameless, indulgent speculation. Using apocryphal sources, the sacred garment of Adam can be tracked from Genesis 3 to Genesis 50. But where Joseph, Jacob's son, passed his garment is a mystery. The record goes silent. Whoever inherited Joseph's treasures is unknown. We assume it must have been passed to his line, but there are no details after Genesis. Sorta. After 400 years of captivity in Egypt, the head of the house of Ephraim is a guy named Oshea or Joshua. See Numbers 13:8. Joshua later leads the children of Israel to conquer Canaan by the sword around 1250 BC. 300 years after that, Israel apostatizes, and the righteous remnant flee from the northern kingdom to the southern kingdom around 925 BC. These righteous Josephite refugees bring with them the royal Josephite record, which eventually becomes the brass plates kept by Laban in 600 BC. Remember, this is shameless, indulgent speculation on his part. This is literally the section heading. Are you seeing where this is going? If not, you're about to. When Nephi sneaks into Jerusalem on that fateful night, there's some kind of festival going on. And if you read the last 116 pages, you know that that's going to be Passover. Laban girds on his ceremonial armor, his sword, to meet with the elders of the Jews. Happily, Laban gets a little tipsy that night and is caught red-nosed and unconscious by Nephi, using Laban's ceremonial sword and echoing the brutal slaying of Nimrod. Nephi took Laban by the hair of the head and smote off his head with his own sword. This isn't just any ordinary sword. The excellent historian Don Bradley, he's the one who wrote the last 116 pages, argues that the sword of Laban carried was the same sword the Josephite chief Joshua had used in the conquest of Canaan. The sword was caused to be made by Joseph of old in Egypt and was in the hand of Joshua when he led the house of Israel into the land of Canaan. A contemporary account from Joseph Smith Jr. to Martin Harris to Francis Bishop describes the sword of Laban, quote, "And after him it came down into the lineage of Joseph to Laban, from whom it was taken by Nephi, according to the account given in the Book of Mormon. And since the fall of the Nephites, it has been preserved with other sacred things to come forth into the hand of a descendant of Joseph of old in the line of Ephraim." Laban was wielding a sword that was over 1,000 years old. Joseph Smith Jr. was looking at a sword that was almost 4,000. According to the text, Nephi retrieves 3 items from Laban. Nephi girded his armor, took the sword girded about Laban's loins, and as Nephi writes, took the garments of Laban and put them upon his own body, yea, every whit. Getting it yet? Wouldn't Laban's armor have been enough to disguise Nephi? Why take Laban's garment? Why every whit? So Nephi escapes to the New World with 1. Laban's 1,000-year-old royal Joseph sword, 2. An ancient Josephite royal record that was at least 1,000 years old, and 3. Some garment. The The connection to Joseph was not lost on Nephi as he wrote his biography. Joseph was the younger son who dreamt that he would have dominion over his brothers. 1 Nephi 4:19. They mocked him as a dreamer or a man of dreams, saying, "Shalt thou indeed reign over us?" After they tied him up, Joseph pleaded with his brothers, saying, "Wherefore, brothers, are you angry with me? What evil have I done to you?" But Joseph's brothers stripped Joseph out of his coat and trapped him in the wilderness, hoping to tell Jacob that some evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is eventually miraculously saved. Nephi was the younger son who dreamt that he would be made a ruler and teacher over his brethren. His brothers didn't love the idea and sought to take away his life, saying, "We will not that our younger brother shall be a ruler over us." They mocked Lehi as a visionary man, and Nephi pleaded with them, "How is it that ye are so hard in your hearts and so blind in your minds that ye have need that I, your younger brother, should speak to you, yea, and set an example for you?" I want to go back to the page here. There was a footnote I skipped over which was pretty good. We would not that our younger brother should rule over us. The footnote says, just before Laman and Lemuel tie up Nephi, Nephi reminds his brothers of their previous angelic vision, one of which the angel announced that Nephi was chosen to be a ruler over them in 1 Nephi 3:29. This reminder sparked their resolve to tie up Nephi. So, kind of a good fill-in there. Anyway, how is it that I should be set as an example for you? But Nephi's brother laid their hands upon Nephi and bound him with cords and left him in the wilderness to be devoured by wild beasts. What were Laman and Lemuel going to tell Lehi? That an evil beast hath devoured him? Nephi is without doubt rent in pieces? Question mark? Nephi didn't spend a decade in an Egyptian cell, but was miraculously saved from his envious older brothers. Any self-respecting Josephite knew exactly what was going on here. He's showing the parallels between Joseph from Egypt and Nephi, and how, if they're from the Josephite lineage, he's showing them, look, my story parallels the Joseph story. My sword, my garments, everything like this is saying just bam, ba-bam, 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 point after point after point after point after point. I'm kind of representing Joseph being the leader of the brothers. Don't you get it? So, and that's really explored in the last 116 pages, which is super cool. Also on prior readings, if you need to go back. Conclusion. Just as Nephi and bros are preparing to sail off to the New World, sacred Josephite relics in hand... Sorry, I'm getting text messages. Let me silence that. There we go, in case that comes back. Just as the Nephi and bros are preparing to sail off to the New World, sacred Josephite relics in hand, Laman and Lemuel asked Nephi about the fragility of the covenant. Quote, "Behold, we cannot understand the words which our father has spoken concerning the natural branches of the olive tree, and also concerning the Gentiles." 1 Nephi 15:7. Nephi then busts out a PowerPoint and explains it all. But of course, Laman and Lemuel are concerned about the olive tree. Zenos's allegory of bringing forth fruit is terrifying for the brothers, who expected their seniority alone to qualify them. Just like Judah, the man, and Judah, the tribe, Laman and Lemuel didn't like Jacob's ladder or Zenos's olive tree. That's probably why it was ripped from the Bible too. Because remember, they had the brass plates, and that was supposed to be in there. Anyway, if God's covenant was modular and fungible, then there was suddenly a lot of repenting that needed to happen. Reuben didn't inherit the garment, nor the priesthood, nor any kind of forgiveness for his sins. Neither did Laman. Neither does anyone. Despite their efforts to censor the Bible, Joseph shows that God is not a respecter of persons, and never has been. Anybody who is worthy can give Thor's hammer a try. Again, the new discoveries and Joseph's annexations center everything on the garment made by Jehovah. The kafar, the covering of Jesus Christ's blood, is the crux of Genesis history. And that's the end of the chapter QR code. Okay, so chapter 11 tomorrow is the conclusion. It's not going to be very long, but I will have it be its own thing. What was interesting is in one of the Ward Radio videos that Jonah Barnes did, he talked about how he must have already been studying this, because he talked about how the garment of Adam was how Nimrod was a better hunter. I had mentioned that earlier. And now it makes sense. It's really fuzzy that how Esau got the garment. Because, like I said, there's different traditions, and there's not much being said that he found so far. So from Nimrod, it gets back to Esau, whether that's through wrestling competition, stealing it, assassination to get it, whatever it is. Esau gets it, but then Jacob is the one who gets it through negotiating the birthright. But that means that the garment is still there, still intact, still important. And so when Joseph is given the elaborate coat, then the question becomes, he did a video about, was the coat truly destroyed or not? Because remember, they took his coat and they rent it and put the blood of a boar on it. And he, in the video that he did, and so not so much in this book, but in the video he did, he basically said that other sources say that Jacob wasn't fooled. He's like, look, if anyone's wearing this garment, how in the world could a boar turn around and gore him? Because they're kind of like, oh, this is like Eden. They wouldn't be thinking about trying to gore anyone with it. So, and that's what makes people such good hunters. So this whole idea that he was gored by a boar didn't really fit. And so he just kind of had to deal with knowing that his children were lying to him and that Joseph was out of his family, because who knows where, because his boys aren't saying. That's one story, or one way of looking at it from apparently some sources that Jonah found. Others were that, holy crap, then the garment was destroyed. At that time, they destroyed Adam's garment. That they literally tore it to pieces. But again, there are some that say that those pieces don't disintegrate. They don't get worse over time, and they stay on. And like, I can't remember if it was supposed to be like the patriarchs of each tribe got a piece of them or something. I don't know. Like, again, it's not in this book, and I remember it being retold on one of his videos, but that's kind of interesting. And so if his wild speculation is that it went to Nephi, dang, that'd be cool. Or maybe it is just that it's a representation of it. I don't know. But yeah, it just seems like it's kind of lost around this time, because we don't have anything solid. So whether it was that the original garment of Adam was destroyed when the brothers threw Joseph in the pit and wanted to convince their dad that he was dead, whether it was that it was destroyed but not completely, and so the fragments still exist, or whether it was that they couldn't get the actual garment of Adam taken off of him, and so they destroyed another garment and soaked it in blood, and so that Adamic garment was then passed down the Josephite line to Laban, and from Laban to Nephi. Cool. But after that, we don't hear about it. So, why is it important to follow the garment? It's not superbly important. I think there's a lot of symbolism behind it, is how I would put it. There's a lot of strength that comes to it. And I'm not talking about like, yeah, you know, like they're saying like Nimrod got buff and he could totally like take out any animal, and because it smells like Eden kind of stuff. Even if that is true, the idea is that it is a symbol of authority, which makes sense because you're being covered by Jesus Christ, and if you're, oh God, I just keep thinking about the sons of God, that phrase from the antediluvians, and the temple, and how they were on the mountain, and I keep thinking of that, and I keep thinking of how it is a huge general motif of almost all nations, that their kings are there by some sort of divine right. And by right, I mean whether that is, well, it's my right to take it because I am divine. I'm descended from those who are divine. So, yeah, of course I should be king. Whether that's, I deserve it kind of right, or the right as in ritual. Either way, I mean, that is a huge motif through almost everything. You have these kind of like God Emperor stuff. And I've gone off on that before. And so it makes sense that the strong symbols of authority and power travel with those relics. But yeah, I think it is a good point that Jonah brought up, that especially the idea that the covenant was always meant for everyone. You have big responsibility, and if you turn against it, you have greater condemnation. So it's a big deal.
What is
the covenant? The symbology of Adam's garment.
Oh, I was like, which covenant?
Well, there's lots of them. It's all meant to be about trying to get the gospel to everybody. And if you read the Bible on its own, there's kind of a narrative that Israel is the chosen one, we're the best, rah, rah, rah. Salvation only comes through us, so you gotta join us, you have to, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you read the Book of Mormon and you read the rest of the Bible, you guys are just like fascinated with looking at yourselves, aren't you?
No, mine is.
You are too. Don't throw her under the bus. But the idea is that just give me a second. I'm literally wrapping up here. And so just give it a minute. The idea is that if you look at the Book of Mormon, the covenant was never meant to be a righteous people's only club. It was always meant to be that, okay, if you guys are going to have this, you'd better give it to everybody else or you're under bigger condemnation. And not only that, he would try with everybody. Like, just the fact of the existence of the Book of Mormon shows that it's not just through one particular line. It shows that, hey, you had prophets over here in the Americas. You had prophets everywhere, anywhere, needed to repent. All right, you guys are being goofballs. All right, love you. God be with you.